Hi, I'm Alex Titow, and this is my final presentation for English 317 Cross-Cultural Writing. Authentic storytelling is a responsibility authors must have to research the cultures that inspire their stories, avoiding ignorant stereotypes and inspiring readers with a curiosity to understand more about the culture as well. A lot of the times, authors use characters to fill roles in their stories, confining them to be faceless archetypes. This might be to help quickly progress the story along, and the reasoning behind this might be that the character is not very important and is used to fill dead air. But every sentence must do one of two things: reveal characters or advance action, as Vonnegut said. These moments that might be considered dead air or faceless characters could be revised to authentically portray an experience and the actual people in it. Even a faceless character still speaks to the reader, and as an author, there is a responsibility to understand what is portrayed in their writing. Whether they are drawn from life or a pure fantasy, all fictional characters lie somewhere in between the two. Burroughs said that. But approaching this revision requires an understanding of cultures and perspectives that the author might be lacking from their own experience. In the short story Scar, Anne Mei Su describes the characters and their family from her own experience as a child and orphan in China. The characters in the story almost all seem to be suffering in different ways, dealing with a mixture of tragedy and cultural pressure after the dearest disappearance of Anne May's mom. How these characters treat Anne May in the memory of her mother might seem overly vicious to some, but the authenticity of this story stems from the author Amy Tan's own childhood and experience as the daughter of Chinese immigrants. When Anne May says by the midpoint, "I felt unlucky that she was my mother and unlucky that she had left us," the reader understands that the character of Anne May is not just a disgruntled teen or petulant child, but someone trapped by the tragedy of losing her mother and being expected to not mourn her. Researching the cultures and perspectives for a story is important to retain the authenticity and depth that might have been missed stereotyping cultures and characters. A good author is curious themselves and inspires their reader to be curious. Curiosity is at the heart of every story. It is the reason the reader turns the page and why the author writes the book in the first place. When we care about the characters, we want to learn all about them. And inspiring curiosity can be achieved in a multitude of ways. Writers can sometimes be inclined to neglect this power of the visible. In fact, much of the tension and conflict in characters proceeds from the truth that appearance is not reality. Burroughs. The author ultimately chooses to show what they want to show, and this has the effect of having the reader ask, why? Gabriel Marquez, in the short story Death Constant Beyond Love, tells of a corrupt politician, Senator Osimo Sanchez, who knows the exact time of his death, but still goes through the same motions, being corrupt until his infatuation with a woman leads to political scandal. The setting of this story is in the Roselle de Verre, the viceroy's rosebush, and the senator makes an early joke to himself that the only rose in that village was being worn by himself, Senator Osimo Sanchez. This rose is referenced time and time again, sporadically, and is used by the author to pique the reader's curiosity. Its repeated appearance across the story gets the reader to ask why it's there in the first place. And then this piques the curiosity even more to understand the metaphor. Metaphor is much more than a poetic or rhetorical device, a feature of language. It's an essential organizing and energizing principle of language, sac nusum. The metaphors Marquez uses to explain the character of the senator speaks much more than the words the senator actually says himself. When the senator disparages the villages and makes a joke, he's also asking for their help politically. And even with the knowledge of his own death, the readers lack any empathy through this metaphor, understanding the senator and his actual intentions. What is ultimately great about this story is the curiosity it inspires. The character of the senator is a very distinct one, and the reader sympathizes very little with a man who knows he's going to die. This is because the author wants it that way, and it sparks the curiosity of why, in the first place, he wants it that way. The author's past and political opinions speak to this inspiration. Having lived in Colombia, his own grandfather served as a colonel in a bloody civil war, and would go on to say in an interview, "You see, my family influenced me towards rebellion, rather than towards upholding the established order." Colombia's own history during the author's life was dangerous and sometimes politically corrupt, especially in the era of the Cold War. And this understanding is achieved with things as simple as a rose placed in the story. A slide joke. It doesn't have to be a whole text block explaining the emotions behind their characters, but showing it. Showing the authentic version of why these characters are doing what they're doing. Authentic storytelling does more than just be respectful of other cultures. It adds depth and inspires an empathy that might have been completely missed if the author relied on their own resources.